announcement before this video. We got some brand new JP and Beyond merchandise. Look, they're stickers.
Check it out. Stickers you can stick on any flat, smooth surface. And guess what? They're only $3. You get 2 stickers when you donate on Patreon. Do it right now because while supplies last, this is literally all we have left.
This is it.
Act fast. Tell your friends and family. Get them while they're sticky.
On to the show.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode of JP Squared. First of all, special because I don't have a beard and he does.
Yeah. What kind of topsy-turvy world is this where I have more facial hair than you?
Strange. Talking of strange, we're going to talk today about the JP and Beyond Cinematic Universe.
What is that, you ask?
What is that? Well, we completely made it up and we're going to explain it to you.
So, you guys know that we've made a ton of short films that we call JP Shorts. We have an official playlist of all of them. While we were making these shorts, we were not actually thinking about how they all connect in one timeline or anything like that.
This wasn't like a Marvel thing where we knew this was going to happen
Yeah.
later. No, we just made them as we went.
But we always wanted and had fun talking about how can we maybe connect all of these and, explain how they all make sense and they're all connected.
Yes.
So that's what we're doing for you guys today. Spoilers! Major spoilers. We're going to spoil the ending of every single one of our shorts.
Right.
So, before you watch this, go check out the playlist, watch them all, spend a good, hour or so maybe it takes to watch them all. I don't know.
It's probably a feature length.
Just have a fun time watching our shorts because we're going to spoil them, okay?
Okay. So to start things off, we're going to take it to the year 2024 when time travel can be puzzling happened.
So, in 2024-ish, somewhere around there, Jesse and Jonathan, Jesse builds a time machine that Jonathan and Jesse use to go back in time. Now, there's a key line here that Jesse says. Okay, he says that our molecules could have disintegrated and our consciousness ripped apart and scattered throughout the universe. Well, folks, that is exactly what actually happened. So when they time traveled,
it created different Jonathan and Jesses
that were displaced throughout
time and space. Who are these guys? This is
so for now, we're going to call these guys the time travel Jonathan and Jesse. Now, we'll come back to this video later because there are plenty of other things to talk about. But first, for now, that's all we need to explain is that they time traveled and then they created all these other clones of them throughout time.
Right. Nobody can recognize that these guys look and sound exactly the same.
Yeah, in this universe, people, they just
They're
don't
blind
realize
to the fact that
we all they're clones of each other. Right. Even if they talk, they could run into their own clones and they just wouldn't know.
Let's get away from 2024 and go back as far as we can to the Bible times when Bat Moses, what did he do? He freed the Israelites from Egypt, and it was Batman. So
okay,
that's back here. We don't have a picture, sorry. Batman.
So, after thinking about it some more, we decided that Bat Moses doesn't really belong on the timeline because it's not really like our other shorts. It's like a parody trailer. Plus, it says that Christian Bale is playing the part as Bat Moses. So, you can kind of just disregard that one. Moving on. Now we jump to modern times, to 2010, where Ice Cream Day happens. So, this is a version of Jesse and Jonathan. We'll just call them the Ice Cream Jesse and Jonathan. Jonathan's an ice cream truck driver. Jesse is an ice cream loving man-child. Now, one thing to note is in Ice Cream Day, we see Jonathan's siblings, Will and Danielle, but they're not the siblings of that version of Jonathan in Ice Cream Day.
They're siblings of a different version of me, which we'll meet later.
Yes.
In fact, we'll meet him right now.
In 2012, we have what we call the Dorm movies. These were a couple of short films that we made. Now, they're not on JP and Beyond's channel. They're on my YouTube channel, but they're in the JP Shorts list, so that's where you'll find them. So these all happen within basically one entire week. These guys are what we're going to call Jesse and Jonathan Prime. They're like the main version of the Jesse and Jonathan. Even though they're not the original, they're
the most real. They're the most like the real us.
Yeah, now these guys are super close to the real version of us. They have a YouTube channel. They made live action Toy Story. Jonathan married Kim and had a baby, and he has the same siblings. So it's very close to the real version of us. They have JP and Beyond as a channel, except obviously they don't make the JP Shorts.
They only just do a talk show and live action Toy Story, apparently.
There's some interesting stuff that happens, they presumably die at the end of the Lionel Lives, but apparently they didn't die.
They survived. Now, River, Jonathan and Jesse, we meet in Big River. They're obviously not the same guys as the ones who were staying in the dorm together because they
meet each other for the first time.
Right.
Hi there.
Hello.
So that takes place in like 2013, and these guys presumably die at the end. So, or do they?
Or do they?
We don't know.
Make it out?
Maybe the bombs didn't actually fall. Maybe they canceled it because there was some idiot down there who didn't evacuate.
Maybe.
For now, that's the end of River.
That's the end of them. They came for one video, and then they probably died.
Now, still in 2013 times, we have the old man in the swimming pool. Now, this is another version of Jesse who... Now, this guy has a name. Well, they all have names, really.
They all have names, but this one has a different name.
Yes. Now, that's one thing I didn't explain yet, is that a lot of these clones, some of them are more similar to the real Jesse and Jonathan than others, I guess. Like, you know, they all have, like, similar interests. You'll see some of them have the same t-shirts a couple of times because they like the same things. You know, they came from the same people, so they like Toy Story. Lots of times their names are Jesse or Jonathan.
My sister Emily is in this one, and for all we know, that's the real Emily.
Oh, yeah. Well,
she's my sister.
There's only one Emily.
That's true. There is.
Yeah, so this happened in your pool. You weren't there that day, apparently. Now, Monty in this video mentions the captain of a ship that he used to be on, and we're going to meet that guy later. We see Monty and Emily's kids at the end of the movie, and yeah, I know that that's William and Danielle again, but we'll just call that a coincidence that they happen to look just like them.
And we're still in the year 2013, where Steve's Leftovers happens. Obviously, this isn't the real Johnson, this is Steve.
Yes, okay. And he has a roommate, Jerry the Frog, who we'll meet later. We'll also meet this Steve later. Now, an interesting thing in this video is that there's a laser disc of Toy Story on the wall that has signatures, which is the laser disc that Jonathan got when he went to Pixar, which we know that Jonathan Prime owns that laser disc because you're going to see it many, many times. So why is it at Steve's house in 2013? We don't know, guys. What did he do? Did he steal it? What do you think happened? Why is it there? Is it just one that looks similar that he also went to Pixar and got it signed?
I don't know.
Maybe.
Why did Steve do that? I don't know.
Now, moving on to 2014, we get two videos that are like back-to-back. We have the Sombrero Convention. This is when Jonathan Prime now has moved into his apartment. He lives with his roommate Dylan, and we meet a new Jesse here. Now, this Jesse, we're going to call him Flagstaff Jesse. This is a Jesse that is just a friend of Jonathan's that lives in Flagstaff. There's not much to say in Sombrero Convention. It's a short little video. Jesse's kind of a jerk. And then after that, we have arm wrestling. Now, something interesting happens here. So
Flagstaff Jesse.
So Flagstaff Jesse is with Jonathan Prime. They arm wrestle. He loses his trophy. And then we have a 7-year later jump, basically. It's 7 years later. He comes back after training in the mountains for 7 years and getting all pumped. So, maybe you're wondering, how is Jonathan Prime back at his Flagstaff apartment 7 years later if his life continues into, you know...
Into real life.
Yeah. Well, there is an answer for that, okay? But that is Jonathan Prime, and he's there, and he arm wrestles Flagstaff Jesse.
He wrestles in 2021.
In 2021 is where arm wrestling ends. So Jonathan's back in Flagstaff. And then Flagstaff Jesse goes off again to train some more.
Right.
That's the last we see of him.
Okay, now I have two little side adventures that we should have put this one back in 2013. Finding Jim is a short that I made, and I'm not in it, but we know it happens in the same universe because the newspaper has live-action Toy Story on it.
Yes.
Also, Nonstick is an adventure that I had with my roommate Dylan after Flagstaff Jesse left. That's still Jonathan Prime.
2014.
Is 2014.
Okay, so now we're still in 2014, and next is I Dream of Handbells. Now, this is Jesse Prime, okay? This is like the main version of Jesse. And this is not Jonathan Prime, though. Right. You see, while Jonathan Prime is in Flagstaff, and he met some other clone of Jesse.
Flagstaff Jesse. I was out with Flagstaff Jesse.
Jesse Prime is here down in the valley area, and he meets another Jonathan that we'll call Handbell Jonathan, I guess.
Yes. And I come back later, Handbell Jonathan.
Oh, yes. Now, of course, you guys know, because I told you to watch all of our shorts, which is what you were supposed to do.
Which you did.
At the end of the Harold adventure, which is Jesse Prime, we realized that he was actually an alien the whole time. Which explains some of his weird behavior. Like in I Dream of Handbells, he's kind of strange. He mistakes a shark for a jellyfish, and he thinks a bellhop is what you call a bell player.
And there's shoes sitting on a chair, sitting on a bed.
With sunglasses on.
With sunglasses on.
So there's something kooky going on with this Jesse.
Right. And you'll see that he was weird when he was in the Dorm series as well. He wears a Nacho Libre mask to go to the store every time. Like, he's slightly off.
Yeah. So. You see, guys, the signs were there all along.
Yeah, always
even though we weren't actually planning it.
Right. He's totally an alien back here.
And then this video jumps 1 year later as Bellhop Jonathan becomes a professional bellhop. I guess that announcer's an alien too.
was an alien too. And now we got team players, which is Jonathan Prime. It's the real me, almost real me, and it's my wife Kim, as we are living in Flagstaff, and we are right here, 2015.
And then, while he's still in that same house in Flagstaff, they moved to a house now, just so you know.
Yeah.
Dylan's gone. Then we have the Nut Before Christmas, okay? So this is 2016, and this is where Jesse Prime comes up to visit Jonathan Prime. It's the two Primes. We haven't seen them together since the dorm, okay? So now we have both Jesse, Jonathan Prime, and wacky things happen with the Nutcracker. Now, there's a very important thing that happens here, or did happen. The Condiment Wars is a reoccurring phrase you hear a couple of times in our videos. What is that? We have no idea. We've never defined it. Obviously, it's a war that means all the condiments on Earth are gone now, or almost all gone.
I haven't seen ketchup in years. Since the condiment wars, I didn't think there were any left.
And also, apparently, all the ostriches, what's the... Ostriches. Yeah, they all died too. The only thing that could probably lay something this big would be like an ostrich, and we know that the last ones died in the condiment wars. I don't know how they're connected. We don't know what that is. So go ahead and theorize what were the condiment wars.
But I think...
And we also don't know exactly when they happened. Because clearly nothing crazy is happening really here. We don't know.
Somewhere between 2014 and 2015. It wasn't a long war, but it resulted in all dead ostriches and no more condiments. Well, rare condiments throughout the world. The Hammock is another short that just stars the real Jonathan Prime, the main character of the series, and has no Jesse in it. Don't watch it if you're my chiropractor because ow.
Now, we're still in 2016, and next is Spy Gear, Action Cam, something like that. Okay, in this video, we meet a new version of Jesse and Jonathan. These are two police detectives, and they have names. Well, one of them we know, his name is Fletcher. That's the Jonathan. I don't know what the Jesse guy's name is. But they are mustached men that, you know, work as detectives, and, well, you know the rest because you watched the video, obviously. Now, in this video, we see the Pizza Planet truck, which is owned by Jonathan Prime, just like the real Jonathan, because it takes place in the same town. This is now where Jonathan has moved down to the valley area, yes. So that's why his truck is there. We also meet the police chief, Chad is his name, and you'll see him later. And also, my car that I own, my red car, which you're going to see quite often after this, is the car that the burglar drives away in. So apparently he owned that car before I did.
Or he stole it and then sold it to you. And next we have the end of Jonathan's movies, which is a strange one. We're acknowledging that we are making videos and things, so it's obviously Jonathan and Jesse Prime.
Yeah, and once again you see the signs that I'm an alien because I can whip up a Inception machine like out of a couple of buckets and stuff. Right. And also, this Jesse mentions... Well, I do have that functioning time machine that I built for that last video. Now, if you're wondering what he's talking about...
Because the time travel one's over here.
The time travel one's over there. He's not talking about that time machine. Because these guys didn't make that time machine. He's talking about another time machine that he made for another video that we never actually got to see. Like, you guys haven't seen the video he's talking about.
At the end of Jonathan's movies, you get to see a lot of the things that are inside Jonathan Prime's memory. So you get to see a lot of the things that coincide with my real life.
Like your family.
Right.
And we see Police Chief Chad once again.
So I'm not sure how I know him, but I do. So next we have Santa Comes Late, which is kind of easy to follow. It's Jonathan Prime again, and he's living at his house, and Santa Claus is another version of Jesse that was flown way back in time, probably a little after the Bat Moses time.
Moving along in 2017, we have Pirates of the Duck Pond. This is Jesse Prime. He's out at the park one day just playing some Pokemon Go like I do. He's wearing the same shirt I'm wearing right now. And he comes across Clancy Swallowdagger. This is the captain that Monty McFishywater Fisher Sailorfish mentioned way back in Old Man in the Swimming Pool, so they know each other.
Like the time the captain and I were thrown in the brig for teasing the chef about his lisp.
It wouldn't be any worse than the time me and old Monty was thrown in the brig for teasing the chef about his lisp.
I just realized I've been holding this ruler, which I intended to point at things, but I barely have been doing that. And now I'm just holding it for fun.
So either start pointing or get that thing out of here, because it almost hit me a couple times. Thank you.
Then a little further in 2017, we have World's Greatest Dad. Now this version of Jonathan is Fletcher, the same guy from the Spy Gear. He's this same looking guy, same voice. Now this version of Jonathan has a son who is a version of Jesse. He's none of the Jessies we've met so far. He's no name Jesse because his dad didn't name him. A couple other things to point out is we see the Pizza Planet truck once again because Fletcher's working on it with his son, but he doesn't own that truck because Jonathan Prime owns that truck. So Fletcher's some creepy guy who just like, the way I picture that scene going down is like, man, I really want to show you. Boy, we're running out of time. You know what? This truck over here looks good. Let's just go work on this one. He
how to work on a truck.
He just used some other guy's truck, which was Jonathan's.
Also in 2017, we have The Fly That Wouldn't Die. This one's pretty easy to explain. The fly didn't die.
Yeah, that's Jesse and Jonathan Prime. They're coming up with something. I don't know what they're doing at the beginning of the video, but it's something related to their channel or making videos. They're brainstorming something. Once again, we get more proof of Jesse being an alien because he mentions like having an arsenal of all these weapons and a giant tank and all these weird things that he was using to try and kill this fly.
Mm-hmm. Obviously,
only an alien would have that.
Yeah.
Now we begin a hairy adventure, the Harold series. Now this first episode we filmed came out in 2017. But we're just going to say that this whole thing takes place in 2018. It takes place in maybe like a month or two.
It takes place in the span of a month.
Right? Yeah, like the span of a month.
Right.
So the first one is the surprise egg. Harold is born. He comes out of an egg that Jesse Prime finds. So these are the Prime guys once again. We're also at a new house of Jonathan's now. So he moved again.
And in episode 2 of A Hairy Adventure, we meet, once again, Clancy Swallowdagger. They follow Harold.
Yep, Jesse obviously says that, he knows who that guy is. He's seen him before. Yeah, Jonathan, that's the crazy pirate I told you about. Now, Harold met someone else while he was out there rampaging around, and we'll learn more about that later. And then part 3 of Harold, they finally catch up with Harold again, and crazy stuff happens. Once again, we know Jesse's an alien because, he basically teleports himself or something.
Would you just get a move on and get over here? I need your help.
Okay, I'm here. And then we finish off with Harold Part 4. At the end of this, it's revealed that Jesse was in fact an alien this whole time. He goes back up to outer space, and this is the last you ever see of Jesse Prime so far, okay? We don't know what happens to him. He's just out there, back home, in his space home. And then something huge happens at the end of Part 4. Harold disappears because Thanos snaps his fingers.
Yes.
So that means that the JP and Beyond Cinematic Universe takes place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Obviously. If
Yeah.
you didn't guess that already. So that causes actually a lot of problems. And things start to... If it wasn't confusing enough yet, it starts to get really confusing because the snap happened.
Okay, so now we're following, basically real-world events, guys. Okay, the snap happens in...
Real-world events like the snap.
Yeah, so that happened in 2018. Which means we get 5 years of half the universe gone. So the next video is Operation Escape Room. Now, we don't know exactly what year this is, but it's sometime during the 5 years after the snap. Jonathan Prime, this is the story we've come up with.
Sure.
Jonathan Prime...
Didn't get snapped away, we saw that.
Yeah, he's still alive. But somehow, through all the panic and the shuffle, he's led to believe that his wife and his son have been snapped away. They haven't, guys. They're alive and well. But Jonathan Prime thinks that they disappeared. And he's devastated. And his life is ruined. And so he just leaves town. He just leaves his whole life. He just abandons his home and he's gone.
Pretty much just...
He just goes and wanders. He just can't even stand to be in his house anymore. So now that means that Jonathan Prime's home and all of his stuff are just sitting there ripe for the taking, I guess.
Right.
The Pizza Planet truck is just sitting there in his driveway.
Which I should say that my wife and son, since they didn't get snapped away, we'll talk about that in a minute, there was some mix-up. Their phone was dead, they weren't home, and then we crossed paths, but we didn't cross paths, and we both decided together but separately to leave and start something else.
Each group thinks that the other person's gone, and they just all decide to...
They also left the house open.
Yes.
So in Operation Escape Room, we meet 2 new versions of Jonathan and Jesse, Archie Nemesis and Agent Bold.
Mm-hmm. Now we can see that we're at Jonathan Prime's house, so obviously, Nemesis used this abandoned house as his lair to trap this girl, and so that's where this whole, climax takes place, is in Jonathan Prime's garage. Now sometime after that little fiasco with the spy guys, we get moving day. So the house is still abandoned, it's up for the, available on the market now. So Billy Blodgett moves in. Some interesting things we see. So obviously the Pizza Planet truck is still just sitting there in the driveway because Jonathan left it there. So we see a ton of stuff that happened in Billy's past. Like, that's basically what the whole video is. One thing we see is the return of Handbell Jonathan. He's now like some music teacher. He's
Hosting music.
He's hosting some concert,
Right.
something like that. We also see another familiar face, which is Jerry the Frog is licking Billy's ear for some reason.
He decided to become
He,
a real frog.
yeah, like
He's like, who am I?
he just gave in to more of his frog instincts at some point and just realized that that's all he was a frog. So he's just gonna do froggy things now.
Yeah. So Jerry the Frog decided to become an actual frog, and he licks Billy sometime during his life.
We also see another familiar face, which is that of Harold the Monster, who is like biting Billy's arm. This obviously happens during that day where Harold escaped and went all crazy
So it
and,
was this day.
and ate people's hands and all that. He tried to eat another hand that day. But now, moving on to the present, at the end of this, Billy throws away all of his stuff, including his super rare sword. And this is where we meet a new version of Jesse. Well, I don't know what to call this Jesse, but this Jesse...
Entrepreneur Jesse?
He's a globe-trotting Jesse that goes around the world and
Collecting rarities.
he collects old things. He's just an interesting guy. He does a lot of crazy things. Now we see Jesse Prime's red car again, but now it's globe-trotting Jesse that owns it. Obviously, when Jesse Prime went back up to outer space, he just abandoned his car somewhere, and it only seems fitting that it would end up in the hands of a different version of Jesse. Now we meet this Jesse again right away in the next video, which is Sales from the Crypt. At the end of moving day, Billy moved out, and Jesse, globe-trotting Jesse, saw a perfect, opportunity to just live in this house that is now up for sale. So now globe-trotting Jesse lives in the house that Jonathan Prime used to live in, which Billy lived in after that, and now he lives in it. Now, the actual year is still, kind of unknown. I mean, it's happening anywhere within these 5 years after the snap. We also meet another version of Jonathan, which is a Jonathan who's basically Rod Serling, who knows he can...
I know that there's an audience.
Yeah.
I know that there's an audience and I can talk to them. That's my power. Of course, this movie is also starring Alicia. And of course, that's the same Alicia from Operation Escape Room, because there's no duplicates of other people, only us.
Yes.
So that's fine. She goes yard sailing to the same yard that she was kidnapped in.
I mean, she lives in that neighborhood.
And weird things happen because it's after the snap, and so it's
Yeah.
like not unusual to be kidnapped and then go back to the same place. You can't really escape badness during those 5 years, I think.
Okay, but how do we explain Kim and Peter both appearing there and not even in the same scene? I bet that's weird, huh? How are we going to explain that one? Well, I have an explanation. Yes.
Okay, do it.
So, like we said, Kim and Peter, they weren't snapped away, but they thought Jonathan was, and he thought they were, so they just both moved on in their lives. But apparently she still lives somewhere in that neighborhood. So she's walking around one day. She walks by the old house. She sees this Jesse, globetrotting Jesse with his sale. She stops by and buys a purse. She leaves. And then what I think happens is she was talking with her friend later. And she's like, yeah, I passed by the old house and there was a yard sale. I really wanted to buy this nice piggy bank for Peter, but I just didn't want to even be at that house. It was just too painful. Do you think you could take Peter over back to the house and get him in this piggy bank?
Right.
So that's why we see Peter with some strange
With
woman
some stranger.
who's not his mom
Right.
later on. Okay, wait a minute. Is that Harold back there? What is Harold doing back there? That makes no sense. Don't worry, guys. There's an explanation. That's not the Harold that we know. It can't be because we're going to see him again in another video. So the only other explanation is that globetrotting Jesse must have just come across another one of Harold's kind on one of his crazy adventures. I don't know if he killed it or if he found its dead body, but either way, that's the body of a different Harold, not our Harold.
And next we're going to talk about A Little Birdie Stole Me. Now, these last three didn't really have a clear year attached to them, but this one does. This definitely happened in 2019. At least the beginning of it did.
Because Jonathan says that he's been in there for 3 years, and 3 years before that was right when Stranger Things was released, which was 2016.
I got here July 12th, 2016.
So, I'm going to put this right here, about the middle of the year, July. This is when it's a different Jonathan and a different Jesse. This is when Bird Jonathan goes into the bird realm and it gets stuck. So, Bird Jonathan disappears way back here.
Now, Bird Jonathan has a t-shirt with a picture of Billy from Moving Day, on it.
How does that make sense?
Yeah, why is Billy on a shirt? Well, guys, Maybe some of you know by now in real life that I used to do another YouTube channel called Billy and Chucky. That was a puppet show. So the Billy in the JP and Beyond universe is based off of that Billy from the Billy and Chucky show on that YouTube channel. He's very similar. Like, he also had a YouTube channel with him and his friend Chucky.
It's the same Billy, and he had a YouTube channel that this bird Jonathan was a fan of.
Yeah. And then at the end of A Little Birdie Stole Me, it jumps 5 years later. They're still stuck in the bird realm. So now we're in 2024. You think that they don't actually touch the bird and get sent back to the real world, but they actually did. And we have proof. And we'll get to it.
So now we're pretty much back up to 7 years after the arm wrestling tournament, or whatever you want to call that. Jonathan Prime was just roaming the globe, and one place that he felt comfortable and at home was Flagstaff. So he went back and he realized that, oh wait, like the other Jesse from Flagstaff, he doesn't know that he's another Jesse, he just thinks my other friend, he might be coming back, so I'm going to go there and meet him if he comes back for arm wrestling, because if he wasn't snapped away, I want to make that friendship connect again.
And he even makes the apartment look just like it did when it's like he just decided to just go back and kind of just relive a better time in his life, so...
Right, which is the next time we see Jonathan Prime is the end of that video.
Now, at the time of filming this video, we actually haven't released this next video called Flip Being Out yet. So this is not the actual thumbnail, which you guys know, but we don't know because we don't know what the thumbnail is going to be.
We'll figure it out.
So anyway, the next video is Flipping Out. It's definitely a new version of Jesse. We don't know if it's a new version, if it's Jonathan Prime, or if it's a new Jonathan, but this is a new Jesse. We see him at his RV that he lives in. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to say that happens pretty much in today's time, which is like 2020. So maybe you guys can decide, is this Jonathan Prime? Is this his new Jesse friend?
Mm-hmm. I think it is Jonathan Prime. I mean, other than I robbed a bank, that's pretty unrealistic. So it could just be bank robber Jonathan, but I don't know.
Bank robber Jesse and Jonathan.
Yeah.
Maybe that's who we're meeting now. Maybe this is Jesse Prime and he came back from outer space. I mean, just look at what he's typing on his computer. That looks kind of strange and alien-like. But if it is him, then we know for sure that this didn't take place before he went up to outer space, because we see he gets a quarter glued to his thumb, which is never going to come off, according to his future self. Also, this never comes off. And that clearly wasn't on his thumb in any other video, so whoever this Jesse is, he's gonna have a quarter on his thumb for a very long time. Okay, there's one last video, which is office hours and hours and hours. The Jesse in this video is Fletcher's son, the no-name Jesse. He comes back, he's moved on in life, he's working at some company called Office Solutions, Inc.
And Fletcher decided to name him, guess what, Jesse.
Yes, he has a name now.
He didn't really think of, like, maybe Jesse. Like, I think that's the name that just keeps coming in my head.
Yes. So. In the background of Jesse's cubicle, you see he has a poster, a movie poster, for A Little Birdie Stole Me. It's literally that thumbnail. He has it. Now, I bet you're wondering, how can we possibly explain that one?
That doesn't make sense.
It's over. There's no way we can connect these if you're clearly seeing our video. Like, well, guys, here's the story of that one. You see, at the end of A Little Birdie Stole Me, that Jonathan and Jesse, they actually did decide to leave the bird realm.
Forget it, I'm going home.
So they get sent back to the real world. It's like a couple years, 5 years later. And they decide to tell the world their crazy story about finding this bird realm and all that. So they actually make a movie based on their real life of getting trapped into the bird realm. So these guys make A Little Birdie Stole Me, which is based off of their lives. Isn't that crazy?
They made that video. And
so it is a movie in this universe. It's from the actual guys that got sent there. Crazy.
So since they came back in the year 2024, we have to know that since this movie is popular enough for Jesse to have a poster of it, Office Hours and Hours has to happen at least 2025 or later.
Long enough to where it took, they were able to make a movie and all that.
And there's one more recurring character in Office Hours and Hours and Hours. It's Steve.
Steve, all the way back from here. Steve's Leftovers. He's back as Steve. And yes, of course, we did plan that one for real. Like, we just purposely wanted him to be Steve from Steve's Leftovers. Like I said, sometimes we did purposely bring back a character, but overall, we were not thinking of this craziness. We just slapped it all together for fun at the end. The Time Wizard 330 that they use You can see that it was copywritten by JP and Beyond 2016. What is that about? Why is their name on that device? Well, guys, this is the time device that Jesse Prime was talking about in the End of Jonathan's movies when he said that, well, I do have that functioning time machine that I built for that last video, and which took place in 2016, so the year actually lines up. So this must have been some device that he built for some video that we don't know what it was, but he built it, and then he must have like sold it. Then it must have been converted into a time slower machine
instead of a
time machine. We also see the JP and Beyond logo on this employee's computer. I don't know if he's like affiliated with their channel or something, or maybe he's just some kind of fan and he's doing some kind of artwork, but just an interesting thing to notice.
So there you have it, almost. Why did we put Time Travel is Puzzling at the very, very end, taking place in the year 2024? Because of Harold.
Yes, okay, so you know Harold is there at the end of Time Travel Can Be Puzzling, and he's clearly Harold Finster because these guys, the time travel guys, they know him as Mr. Finster.
Oh, see, look. There's Mr. Finster taking his walk.
But Harold was snapped away, so obviously this is when he comes back after the snap.
And the Avengers bring everybody back in the year 2023, so therefore, time traveling is puzzling, or whatever that's called, has to happen around
sometime
2024.
Because, yeah, it takes Harold some time to get settled down in his new life. He finds a place to live or whatever, and
so we're saying 2024 is when Time Travel Can Be Puzzling started this whole thing.
But wait! I bet you're wondering, wait a minute, we see the newspaper of live-action Toy Story in Time Travel Can Be Puzzling. That's the same newspaper from 2013. How can that be? I mean, and Jonathan clearly says,
It's still today's date. It must have worked.
how can that be the same day if years later Harold is back after the snap? Well, guys, either it was just like a super slow news day and they didn't have any other news, so they just went with the reprint of some old, like the best news they ever had in their entire paper's, career.
I think what it was is it was the 10-year anniversary of live-action Toy Story, the film that changed history.
Just changed it, and they're like,
And
in
so-
honor of that,
right.
we're going to reprint you,
We're gonna
and the identical
same
newspaper that came out
newspaper.
that day.
Yeah, that's what
That's
happened.
what happened.
And that's the day.
I told you guys, we have an answer for anything. There are no holes. There's no plot holes. This thing is plot hole proof.
Flawless.
It's just flawless.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Obviously, we're going to have to do this in another 10 years or so whenever that happens.
Yeah. Now, we're not going to purposely try to make every short film from here on out try to fit this, because that's not fun. We're just going to do whatever we want. We'll put whatever Easter eggs we want, even if it doesn't make sense, and then we'll try to figure out how it makes sense later, because that's more fun. We had fun doing this. Let us know if you think this makes sense, or if you caught something that maybe we didn't catch. We also have a brand new short that's about to premiere soon, and I'm sure you guys are going to want to know where that fits in the timeline. So from now on, we're going to tell you guys that in our podcast episodes that we always put out whenever we make a new short. Check it out. Also, you might have noticed that we didn't talk about every single film that was in the JP Shorts playlist. These are the ones that we're going to consider like the actual part of the actual JP Shorts timeline. Anything else that's in that playlist is really just whatever. I mean, you can try to make it fit if you want.
Some of them do. Cultured fits in easy. Like, things that don't have us in it really
But,
fit easily.
Like, Yo definitely doesn't fit because that takes place in the Pixar universe. So some of them just don't fit, and some of them I just didn't care about enough to try to make fit. Okay?
But there's that. So thanks for watching. Bye.